trying to bring this aesthetic, this style to the public space. And one of the things that this does afford you is to participate in communities across the US, if not the world, particularly through the, quote unquote, street art movement.
Right. Well,
right?
The image you have up here is this is pretty much a straight up, brush painted commercial gig.
Oh, wow.
So
so tell me about that. Tell me about the commercialization of your work.
Well, I have a friend who's worked at J. Crew for quite a long time, and she was someone who collected my work. And I think when the time finally presented itself, we were able to collaborate and work together. And what this project is this is when they're still doing the renovation for their flagship Williamsburg store now. And so they wanted me to do, design. And this design, there's actually a collage of this design. This is actually based off of an actual collage. Which is also kind of an exciting thing about making these collages, which are relatively small, and then being able to realize them as like larger works. But yeah, I caught a little bit of shit for this from people in the neighborhood because obviously there's gentrifying that's going on.
Yeah.
And so I understood that, but I had to kind of like explain to people that being an artist, I had a studio in Williamsburg in the late 90s and early 2000s on North 11th and Berry, and they kicked us out in 2000 to create residential properties. So I definitely was in the early wave of feeling the brunt of that situation.
I lived in that neighborhood, so I saw it. And me and Futura, actually, we both lived in the same building. We saw all this unfolding so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like, it was
wild.
So, because, people, they see, oh, J. Crew, there goes the neighborhood. So I understand it. But at the same time, like, I'm being hired to do something. I don't, I'm not.
Yeah. Well, one thing about this image that caught my attention.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's kind of the beauty of it. I've known Cost for a long time. I haven't seen him in quite a while, but yeah, it's kind of a funny thing because you can't really escape that part of it. And so this image was used for various promotional stuff and all kinds of stuff. And I think they might have even made some of those white in some of the things. But I'm very happy when I saw that a lot of it was not, that they left it,
Right. Well, again, one of the beauties of this aesthetic is that it's applicable, right, for design. This New York skateboard. It really lends itself across the board to so many things. When we think about like graffiti and the application of graffiti, like nowadays, it's okay to, kind of spread out into fashion and design and all these things. And I recall when I was younger, I got so much shit for that, and now it's kind of normal.
Yeah, well, this Club Monaco thing you have, that's around, that's also around 2000, 1999, 2000. And that, that I was working at a gallery in Soho at the time. And a good friend of mine that I used to be partners with in graffiti, a guy named Frank Buscarello, who's an amazing makeup artist, him and I were partners for quite a while. And he connected me with the people at Club Monaco. And they said, yeah, they wanted some sort of graffiti design for kind of a textile design. And if you may remember early on in this, in our presentation here, there was a photograph of an inside of a train that I had a tag in. And so when I went to go meet with these people at Club Monaco, I was still showing them portfolios of stuff. I was throwing everything I had out at them, and they were interested, but there was nothing really grabbing them. And I remember, kind of shooting my wad as far as my presentation and being like, fuck, I've told them everything that I got. I showed them everything I got, but I had this small little photo album of graffiti flicks. And so as a goof, I was just like, shit, I was like, this is the last thing I have, so I could show you some of my graffiti photos. And they immediately opened up to that picture of the inside with the tag. And they said, this is what we want right here.
Yeah.
So this is kind of, a representation.
Right. I like, again, one of the things that I appreciate about it is that there's an authenticity to it that isn't faking the funk like some of these designers do. They get a tight face and give it a distressed
No,
look.
I mean, I handmade the mops that I took those tags with on that, for that design. You know what I mean? Like
Gotcha.
I handmade that stuff, but that was a big deal for me because, like I said, that was the first time I really kind of realized, like, wow, because those designs were in the windows of Club Monaco's everywhere, and
Wow.
that was when I really was like, wow, there's another way to get up. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
In essence, you know what I mean? And so
Exactly.
that definitely sparked me to kind of like work.
Yeah, and
On this.
I'm glad you say that because early on in when we were kind of exploring these spaces, there were a bunch of us who were thinking like, well, if somebody is willing to pay, for us to apply design to something, well, that's just another form of getting up, isn't it?
It kind of is.
Whereas some people would
Yeah.
be like, yo, you're selling out.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess. I mean, everyone has their way that the path they're going to follow. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty genuine in everything that I do, and I even feel like even the relationships I have with people are with people that are genuine. So, I don't look at it as selling out. I look at it as evolving. I mean, I understand the idea that people have, like, hey, you did something for this company or and this and this and that, and I understand that. But at the same time, this is this is what we do, and so I would rather me or someone that I know do the designs for X and X company
Yeah.
than like you were saying before, than use some sort of bullshit font or someone who's not really part of the culture. Like I feel like if nothing at all, I can say, hey, I've been doing this for almost 40 years. I'm part of the culture, and so even though I may just be one small percent, I'm not trying to be like, hey, I'm the king of this or I'm the king of that. It's like I'm just happy to be part of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
Well, and the other thing is the opportunities it affords you to uh, express what you really love. That what you've invested your talents and your time to. And
well,
this,
also too, something I've been thinking about a lot recently for whatever reason is a friend of mine who passed away. There was a writer, DG, who passed away several years ago, and I did a piece in his book that said graffiti is what you make it. And like graffiti is a blessing, I hope, for most all the people that are involved with it, in the sense that like you've created something that's unique to yourself, and it's up to you what you want to do with it or don't want to do with it, and that's fine too. You know what I mean?
right. And what's nice too is a lot of aspects of yourself that mean a lot to you, you're able to kind of employ in the commercial space, whether it's interior design application or again another fashion collaboration. This one I like. I like what I'm looking at here in terms of kind of the traditional graffiti, which part of your life, and again, the other part, the collage work coming.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. I mean,
Forward.
this was just one small part of a probably one of the largest commercial projects I've ever worked on, which is a collaboration with Bloomingdale's for, I believe, their fall 2016. I believe it was fall 2017. But yeah, so this is like basically what you're looking at was in the window display, in their Midtown, their main store in Midtown, 59th Street, and this was like a one-off piece that they made for the window display, which I believe, I don't know if it's on display, but I believe this piece was given to FIT. So I believe somewhere in the annals of FIT, this exists somewhere.
Fantastic. And again, this was a big project for you too, right? The Nike Garage project.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's kind of this was an amazing project to be able to go to the Nike campus. But I mean, again, the most amazing thing about this project for me was the community of people that were on this project and the time that we kind of spent in Portland. I mean, obviously painting, is great. Man, working and doing what you enjoy and doing what you love is a blessing. But the community and the people that you do these various projects, and I've been fortunate to be on a lot of different projects, whether it's fine art projects or commercial projects, is those times, and this was a great project because, Stash was on this project, Claw was on this project, Chino was on this project, gory. I mean, there's a whole host of people that painted this
Right.
grotesque. So these are all people that are friends, you know, and maybe we don't see each other all the time, but these projects, I think, you know, for me, the most magical part about these projects is really being able to spend those times together.
Yeah, I would agree. There's something about in these projects that I think sometimes the clients they're not really aware of how, you know, how the camaraderie that lives before and after the project that makes it so special.
Well, I think, and I also think the beauty of, I mean, for me, especially growing up in New York in the 80s and stuff, I mean, you know, is that a lot of people, the walls of you know, social and economical differences kind of come down, because you all have kind of a common goal. And, you know, graffiti, I mean, shit, I mean, there's people that I've met and have had lifelong friendships with that I would have never met if it wasn't for graffiti.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, one of the things that I often say, you know, about graffiti when people come into the museum, I talk about viewing all of this from the eyes of children and children at play and finding identity through play, and particularly through signature, because it's the one thing we all learn early on, right?
Yeah, well, I mean,
identity building.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, when I saw this, you know, I think about that, this, you know, the variations over the years of your practice of signatures, but also of play, not just of play, but also putting yourself out there at risk, which is another thing, right?
Well, risk, yeah. I mean, if we come up to that image, there's a piece that I made that says risk is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's part of me that, you know, obviously maybe I don't, you know, do as much, you know, stepping over the line as I used to. But yeah, I mean, I think there's something that, you know, also coming from the background of graffiti, that, yeah, risk is an exciting thing. And having risk mixed into your artwork and to your practice, I mean, that there's not a lot of things that are like that. So, I mean, like, to be able to have the element of risk and danger and all that stuff is, yeah, wildly exciting, man.
Yeah, but I gather you know, it's not something you kind of just propose to young children when you talk to them. But what you do, you and Chino and a bunch of other artists collaborated on the ABCs of Style.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And talk to me about this, about the importance of this particular project.
Well, I mean, you know, shout out to Dana and Testify.
Yeah, Dana, shout out, Testify.
And you know, I just was very lucky to get handpicked to do the illustration on this cover. Yeah, I mean, you know, to me it was, you know, I very much wanted to make it. I even kind of tried to simplify the style somewhat to really make it kid accessible and kid friendly. So it wasn't, you know, too complex to kind of to read. But yeah, I mean, I'm you know, I'm a huge team player, man. This was a great project to work on, just because it was you know, drama free, and, you know, obviously the caliber of people who are inside this book from a graffiti.
Yeah, but again,
tough.
what's so good about it is exactly how you solved a very difficult problem, a communication problem, right? And
Well, I mean, it's like you're saying before, it's like that childlike imagination is kind of always there. You know, I mean, you're not living in the past, but, you know, you're still connected to this in a way. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, the idea of doing a kid's book that, you know, if this could inspire kids to do letters or think about graffiti, I mean, just that concept alone is kind of exciting.
right. But it's also introduction to typography, right? And again, it's again, typography, as children may see it and public may see it, is a far cry from what we knew of graffiti on trains. And so I think this is kind of, I always thought a very unique thing about this culture, but also what it has done for typography. And it criminalized typography, but it also advanced typography.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And if I may, it made the act of writing and typography, relationship with typography, as you say here, a rite of passage.
Yeah, well, again, this was another amazing project. Chino, Sasha Jenkins, that came up with this stuff, and I mean, this was literally a surreal moment in life. I mean, where this is in the Trolley Museum up in Kingston, New York.
Yep.
And they have a couple of these old trains, and to to be able to paint these trains, was it was very much a full felt full circle.
Yeah, and you know what, and I'll tell you this: when you guys came up, because I was living up there.
Oh, right, that's right.
And I just want to add again, this is so remote from the city. We're 2 hours away from the city, up in the Catskills.
Yep.
So to see something like this happen is really extraordinary.
Oh yeah, I'd say that was a very unique project to work on, and it was yeah. I mean, just to have a train at your disposal, train cars. Yeah,
yeah,
a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, and again, one of the things that I kind of said earlier is like, don't get mistaken, don't get it twisted, so to speak, about you as an artist, in that you have refined a practice and a studio practice and design practice, that you would abandon your original love for style writing.
Oh, no. I mean, they both kind of run they run together. You know what I mean? I mean, and even this is a piece that was done in Miami around 2012. Around 2012, I was doing some really, really insane pieces that were, again, these pieces are somewhat influenced, again, not trying to emulate, but they're influenced by my collage work in the fragmentation. And like I was saying before, kind of like this visual sampling where, like, the 3Ds are going in different ways. Some places have shadows. The styles are not the same. It's kind of taking, to me, like the I don't know what's a good word, like the break in a song. It's like taking the break in a piece, like that really juicy part in a piece where the 3D and it just is all fat and chunky, and really just taking the best parts and trying to make all those best parts into one piece. And like this was like I said, this was a rooftop done in Miami, 2012, with Ewok and Abstract. And
yeah,
and Ewok, for a good while.
Yeah, Ewok happens to be at the museum now painting for us. Again, so what's this fascination with wild style or style writing? It's laborious. It's the public doesn't know what to make of it.
Well, it's just a lifelong love of letters, and writing your name and kind of, trying for me, it's like, in some ways I'm trying to create the perfect piece. You know what I mean? I want to make the perfect piece, and who knows if that'll ever happen, but you just kind of try, and you throw out ideas, and you really, I mean, I do a shit ton of drawing and sketching, and I really try and develop the letters and stuff like that.
Right. There's a ton of stuff I can pick up on this that I really, really like about, again, the structure of the name and everything, but again, how something 2D can have both a three-dimensional effect and a hollowed out effect at the same time. And so that's really interesting to me. And also, again, very smart to use a very simple palette on the fill-in.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it's thinking, this piece is thinking a little bit differently, because a lot of the times I'll be thinking of the piece first and not really the background. I'm just thinking of the piece. And so this is, to me, a more successful version of the marriage of the background and the piece, because I really want the piece to still be the center, the center of the attention. And so I feel like the colors behind it are not outlined. And this is, and then the piece is very outlined and dense, and so that has a nice, nice dynamic.
Yep, and also I think, again, pulling from your your collage work, the fragmentation, right, the faceting, these kind of layers on top of layers, the geometry, the cleanliness.
Yeah, well, I mean, like those collages that we were looking at before that said fame and timeless. It's like, this piece kind of, both the graffiti and the collage work and stuff like that kind of, inform each other, kind of, they just kind of go back and forth. It's kind of like a tennis match of, information that kind of goes back and forth.
Mm-hmm. And of course, this is at the Rooftop Legends. Shout
Yeah,
out to Jesse.
yeah, big shout to Jesse, man. I mean, this is really, I mean, I've been painting in this rooftop for probably 10 years, maybe a little over 10 years. And, you know, in lieu of, you know, I was very lucky once in 2002 to paint the Hall of Fame up in Harlem. I was asked, which I was, you know, honored to do so. And, but I know that the Hall of Fame is still there, and I don't want to take anything away from the Hall of Fame. That's still very much hallowed ground. But I know it's been somewhat diminished over the years. They've done a lot of developing there and stuff like that, so you
Yeah,
can't paint as much. So I really feel like that this rooftop that Jesse has kind of tirelessly kind of promoted and curated and worked on has become a really has also become a really special place in New York City as far
I
as
would agree.
and so I'm very happy to be part of that. But it's also like it really has become a special place that's really that has a real, you know, I mean, you know, amazing people have painted up there. And
Yeah, shout out to that guy over here, the Cheech Wizard, hanging
oh
out.
well, that's a Tristan Eaton in progress.
Nice. The other thing that I like, and you know, this is, you know, the reverence towards the old time, right? The original writers, and
Yeah,
how with today's skill and paint and colors, you breathe new life into it, and also have inspired a whole slew of artists around the world to look back at the pioneers, right? And their
yeah.
style of painting and their
Well,
letter forms.
it's I mean there's so much there's so much to say about these things, because I mean, long story short is that in 1997 I was living in Astoria, Queens, and I moved from several different places within Astoria in a matter of years, and I found one of my earliest sketchbooks from 1981, and I was looking through it, and I was just practicing how to do S's, practicing how to do things, and so I got completely inspired by looking at that book again. And so I kind of, at the time, I was doing these very straight letter pieces with all straight lines and
Yeah,
very rigid and hard lines. And I decided, you know, I kind of want to start from the beginning again, because even when I wasn't writing graffiti, I grew up looking at bubble letters. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I saw growing up. The graffiti in Queens was not really super evolved. You know what I mean?
yeah.
In some ways. And so, yeah, like I said, I looked at this sketchbook, my old sketchbook, and I started to riff on my old drawings that I had done when I first started. And I just was like, you know what? I want to start over, and I want to start making pieces that are fun, because, you know, when I think of the 70s stuff, and you know, having learned so much about the 70s writers and people that wrote in the 70s that I didn't actually see completely firsthand,
Yeah.
it's like there's such an element of fun and discovery of, like, you know, the first 3D or the first shadow or the first crown or the first shines. And I wanted to kind of go back to that. I wanted to do curvy pieces, and pieces that had curvatures to it, and not just straight line, technical, computer looking pieces. And so in 1997, under the 7 line, there was a place where we used to do pieces during the day. And that was where I first did kind of like this old school style. And, you know, I didn't really even think about it, but I had a conversation many years ago with Reese, and he kind of reminded me that Sane from Sane and Smith was
Yeah.
really, I think, one of the first people, and this is what Todd was saying, and I think he's right. He was one of the first people to really embrace that old style and kind of bring it to the forefront. And even when he was doing it, I wasn't even really fully thinking about it in the same way. But once it finally kind of clicked to me, I said, you know, there is really something about the initial first 10 years or so of graffiti that are just so fucking magical, that I want to experience that kind of fun for myself. You know what I mean? In just having, you know, starting from the beginning, starting with bubble letters and just developing those, you know. But that being said, I do kind of oscillate between doing these kind of more funky bubble pieces and, you know, more, you know, wild, you know, burner type pieces, you know.
Well, again, you know, one of the things I appreciate about that in this conversation is how you traverse from one space to another. you know, pushing these ideas forward, right? And also, what's the thread between them all, right?
Yeah.
That said, you have kind of shifted gears recently with your new work. Let's talk about where you are now in the age of COVID, and how is it affecting you and your work and your ideas?
Well, even pre-COVID, last year, 2019, I kind of gave myself the license to try and kind of galvanize some old ideas that I had never really brought to fruition before. You know, things I had sketches of, things I had done some studies of, but never really fully realized. And part of that was using paint and painting more and using spray paint and acrylic. I mean, a lot of these works that you're going to probably show here, these are more studies than, I mean, they're finished works in some sense, but they're more studies in the sense that I'm still finding my kind of painting voice, because
Yeah.
in one sense I paint with spray paint, and like, yeah, sure, I'm a painter, but I've really delved so far into collage that it's taken me a long time to kind of bring the collage into painting. So like this piece you have here, again, this is very much a study. I would like to think that in a few years I would develop this style into a much even better place, but this is an acrylic painting that is literally inspired by those chips of paint that you see on the pillars in the subways.
Mm-hmm.
For a while I was collecting those little chips and kind of making little compositions with them, but being that they're probably not the safest things to work with, I kind of stopped dealing with those, and I would just take photos for reference. And
Right.
so this is from, and the cool thing about it is that I would keep I'm better at it now. I wasn't really doing it much in the beginning, but I would keep notes about which train station this was that I saw this. And of course I would embellish a little bit the colors and kind of accentuate the colors a little bit more. But like I said before, I mean, the subway in New York City is just a constant muse. And so, yeah, so these are acrylic paintings on panels, wood panels. And like I said, they're really studies for hopefully what I'm going to be doing this winter and into the next year are much larger paintings, you know, based on kind of these concepts.
One of the interesting things, and I've talked to Jose Parla about this, about the influence that the hard influence that abstract expressionism is having on us at certain points in our creative lives, and it's interesting because people like us who understand the texture of a city, the texture of a subway, all those nuanced things that you mentioned, mm-hmm. are really real in the practice. So it's not as we're trying to be referential about something, so to speak. And I get it; it's easy to do that, and there is you know, in the academic world of art and the market of art, you know, there is this misunderstanding about that process for some of us, so to speak, right? Because they're saying we're being referential to the ABX movement, you know, and
yeah, no,
and
I mean,
so on.
I mean, yeah, and I understand how people can come to that conclusion, but again, I think that's why it's so important to kind of reinforce the idea of like this stuff is inspired by the subways and graffiti.
Right. And I love it. I love it. You know why? Because again, it comes from its own authentic place and memory recall. Absolutely. And when I did a series, I've been working on the series on and off, alluding very kind of similar paths in a way, but I think I'm going about it more theoretical and in a more pure way about construction, because the paintings the collages that I'm making from paintings are not about the collages themselves, that it's about the painting itself, so to speak.
Right. Well, that's kind of right. So that's kind of where I'm heading with some of this. Right.
So for me, it's kind of like in a way, I kind of started venturing and thinking about this because it's kind of a natural progression for us to expand into this kind of space and thinking, because there's something emotive, there's something artistic. And I was like, well, how do you avoid the cliches, so to speak, about abstract painting and environmental painting? And I was like, well, just put the fucking painting on there, right? Don't make it about you, make it about that environment and that place, which is kind of interesting because it's not a natural place for this kind of work, so to speak, isn't it, as we look at your trajectory and your work, that this wasn't a natural or given that you would arrive at this place.
Well, no, it's actually very much, yeah, it just kind of happens. You know what I mean? I mean, I think I'd always been trying to find a way for me to combine collage and painting together. There's an artist named Esteban Vicente who kind of coined the phrase painting with paper. And so that's always, he's been also a very influential collage artist painter in my life. And so that whole idea of painting with paper is something that I've kind of always put on the back burner because, like you're saying, like a lot of people do this kind of stuff. And so you want to really make it when the time is right and when you've really evolved that style to a place where you're like, hey, this feels right.
Right, when you're not trying to force it into the market, right? When you're kind of like it's sliding into your experience, into your work, right? When there's a thread, there's an attachment. There's something for me that's so it's normally, because when I see a lot of artists do this stuff, I dismiss it, and because it's not in the lineage of their story and their work, right, so to speak. Right, and that it's sometimes a bit too easy to do that because it becomes decorative, right? And of course the market is favoring kind of this distressed urbanization look. You know what I'm saying?
Well, sure, but also too, I would be remiss if I didn't say that, obviously Futura 2000 was making paintings in the 80s that were, a lot of kind of textural spray paint stuff, and also some kind of not stenciling, but hard edge lines and stuff like that. And so that early on, I think, was also kind of opened me up a little bit in that.
I would say his work gave a lot of us permission to explore expressionism, or just fuck the ism, let's just say express ourselves more openly, not with the dogma of a culture, so to speak, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm like a super purist. Like, I'm all about letters and dusty throw-ups and drippy mop tags.
Yeah,
but, there was something about that definitely, as we all know, I mean, that was kind of a moment.
One of the things you had mentioned to me was that you found all these letter forms.
Yes, I have boxes of these letters, and they're actually painted those colors, which are very much in line with my color sensibility.
It's and we were talking again in our geeky art talk. We referenced Joseph Cornell, who did so many.
Yes, well, again, that's a very intimidating thing. I mean, Joseph Cornell was someone my parents exposed me to early, and it connected for me because he lived in Queens. He lived on Utopia Parkway, and I would learn later in life that he didn't even really travel very far from Utopia Parkway and created most of all his work there. And most of all his work is in these kind of distressed boxes with these kind of shelves and wooden boxes with collage elements and three-dimensional elements inside them. So to me, I was very much inspired by his work, but he owned the box, putting things in a box, and he owned that. So to try and even traverse in those things, you got to really come with your own style. And so this piece was probably made in 2011, 2012, and so this was the time that I felt comfortable in kind of making my own work, and hopefully my own original work, but also without a doubt a nod to Cornell for sure.
Is it a pressure to, now that you're more versed in art, and I guess informed by it and influenced by it, is it harder to be original these days?
Well, I don't know. I mean, for me, that's a goal that I have every day. Is like you try and make something, or even not the whole, even just part of the piece, where you're creating something that maybe no one's ever seen before, or like connections between certain things that have never been seen before. So I still like to think that you can make new things. But like I said before, we're all part of a lineage. So yeah, a lot of this stuff has been traveled. These areas have been touched on before. I mean, you think of Picasso. I mean, just to use him. I mean, I know he's kind of an extreme example, but like, there was a show several years ago at MoMA, and when you look at Picasso's work, it's like you see the birth of all these other art movements that came out of what he did in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to keep thinking that those kind of things, even though, there's not a Picasso every year, that those things still kind of happen, that you see something and it creates all these other different genres. And then from those genres, you're able to kind of get in that lane and create other genres, or other ways of looking at things,
And as we start concluding this, we leave this at outlaw instincts and true graffiti writer fashion. What are your instincts telling you about your role as an artist moving forward in the coming years, given that the world around us has shifted and that people are rethinking their purpose, and also rethinking their, particularly artists, as to where their careers are going to end up?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously when you choose a life of this, it's kind of a lifelong thing. And like, obviously, I've been very fortunate to have some success and to have a career. But yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of us, I think we, I mean, one of the things that I think is good about getting older is that you can get better and you can refine and you can still learn more. And so, I still keep hoping, like, as I'm sure a lot of people do, that my best work is still yet ahead of me.
Yeah.
And, even, like I said, even some of the stuff that we were just showing, those things will change. Even those ideas will kind of morph into other ideas. And that's really all I can ask for. I mean, I'm fortunate that people enjoy what I do. And so I guess moving forward, barring, the situation that we're in with all this COVID stuff, I hope to just kind of continue to interact and kind of evolve, I mean, in a nutshell.
Are you considering ever coming to my side of the tracks and doing some sculpture?
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely am in the process of putting together some, not sculpture necessarily, but more assemblage pieces. And I have to tell you, I've been, the last year or so, I've been incredibly inspired by the combination of, say, I've done a bunch of works with corrugated metal, say, but now I'm looking at them very differently. I'm making the assemblage with corrugated metal, but also with objects from nature, and kind of that is kind of an exciting thing. I still haven't fully realized it yet, but it's something that's kind of happened during this this kind of COVID downtime, or COVID residency, as I like to call it.
You know what I like, Greg, is that you in the recent work, you gave yourself permission to break out of your own box, right? And try something different. And that, again, that sometimes isn't easy, especially if you wanted to make sense in kind of your thread of thinking. And some people just kind of can easily break off and go into another direction, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, there's varying degrees, but risk is everything, like I said before. And so, like, even risking, changing up your style or delving into something that you've been wanting to do, I think it's important to allow yourself to do these things and kind of, explore these various things and like I was saying before, like, try and fully, galvanize old ideas and reinforce and invigorate new ideas.
Yeah.
And try and, really, I sometimes, as I'm sure a lot of artists do, you have all these ideas in front of you that you want to kind of bring to life.
Yeah.
But then you want to kind of pick the ones you're like, these are the ones that really are speaking to me now. And, in 6 months or a year, there might be other ones, it's like you have a sketchbook and you look at that, you pick up a sketchbook you haven't looked at in 10 years. and you look at some sketches in there that at the time were like, you didn't really think much of, but then you look at them with new eyes and you're like, oh shit, this is actually something good,
Yeah. I'll tell you something about that. I recently, I'm coming back to my graffiti drawings, and I was pulling them out, and trust me, I don't spray paint. People know this about me. I'm not a spray painter, and I don't have the temperament for it anymore, but I love style writing. I think above all, I always say this, above all the things I've ever done, I thought style writing was probably like the most original and best thing ever. But that said, about how we revisit these ideas, right? Because now at this age, I know that, I may not have the capacity to complete a lot of things and do things, but I also know, this is what I mentioned to you before about automation, right? About being able to automate a process that is as true to the outcome. And I'll share with you afterwards what they look like. And it's interesting, the relationship between your ideas and your output, right? And how you choose to arrive there. Where there was a point where you mentioned me and Kel in Brooklyn. When we were doing all of that, man, there was so many naysayers. And, now the computer's like this other big pencil in our hand.
Yeah, I just remember being like, wow, man, these guys are like ahead of the curve. And I didn't know very, very much about computers. All the computer stuff that I did when I was in college, by the time I graduated, was pretty much obsolete, because literally when I graduated college in 1991, that's when the Macs really first started coming out. And so I had already done all my core computer curriculum. And so I kind of missed that. And to be honest with you, when I was in college, I also was kind of anti-computer, because I saw these people who really weren't very good illustrators or couldn't really articulate things, but they could pull a bunch of clip art together and put something together. And I thought, well, I'm never going to use computers, man. I'm always going to hand draw this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm always going to do it by hand. And to an extent, some of that is still true. But obviously the computers do play a role in this. And I do, do Illustrator stuff and vector work and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course, because it's that you make work with the tools of your time, right? And you make art of your time with the tools of your time. And again, that for those of us that may not understand the inner struggle we may have with that, because we come from an analog space.
100%.
Where things were just so technically drawn and composed. I got to tell you, and that's one of the things I am thinking about in this conversation about art making, right? The process of art making and the intimacy that's involved with actually composing and collaging.
Yeah, I mean, dare I say, I don't want to sound corny, but it's fucking zen. I mean, it's like you're in the studio. A lot of times it's a very
absolutely.
It's a very solitary kind of thing. You know what I mean? So yeah. And it's important to me that the pieces are made by me and they're made by my hand. That maybe means I don't have as much output because I don't have a team of people, making stuff behind me. And I don't have, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, yeah, I like to have my hands on everything.
Right. But the compliment to you, Greg, is that, you're so clean and precise that, one could say, wow, could question, was that done on a computer? And, more surprising and satisfying is to know that it wasn't.
Yeah, well, that definitely happens. I mean, definitely when you show images on the computer, and not just today, just in general, they flatten out. People think maybe it's a print. They think it's an illustration. They think, a lot of times people will mistake the work. And I'm like, no, it's actually all cut paper. And that's fine. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm very open to the relationship that people have with my artwork and art in general. Like I want them to have whatever experience they have with it and however they see it. And I don't really want to meddle too much in the experience that people have with it. People want to ask me stuff or ask me, how I did it. That's fine. But I really want, as I think as all of us do, you want people to have their own experiences with your work.
Legit. So Greg, on behalf of, myself, the Museum of Graffiti, our team over here, all your fans, all your friends that have joined us online, I want to really thank you for just enlightening us, sharing your story, and inspiring us. I mean, this is great. This is great.
Thank you. I feel very lucky. I appreciate the opportunity. I do believe that whether it's me or anyone else, that the oral history of graffiti and this stuff is truly important. So I feel like these interviews that you've been doing over the last several months are great and important, and
I appreciate that.
it's been a nice eclectic mix of people, and so thank you for having me, and thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and again, because I think because we know each other, and I understand your work and all that stuff, that it's quite meaningful for me to revisit you and your work. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And till the next time we see each other, online or offline, it's good to see you. Oh, and by the way, shout out for the Is the Wiz throw up, TMB in the back.
Oh yeah. This is good stuff. This is actually from when Is the Wiz was actually painting at what used to be called the Fun Factory.
Yeah.
And I had my studio just over the bridge in Brooklyn on 11th and Berry, and he was there. He was just starting a piece, and I had been painting, as I'm sure a lot of us have done before. I had been painting a bunch of canvases gray with a blue stripe in the middle and doing throw-ups on them. And so I had one that was painted without anything on it. So I ran back to my studio, and I mean, kind of, art directing is maybe too strong of a term, but I brought a can of beige with a Jif foam cap on it, and a can of Banner Red with a stock tip on it. And I said, hey, here are the colors, just do a fill-in on there. And I'll never forget, Mike, he said, one of the things he said to me, he goes, this was done in 2000, so it's 20 years old now. He said, I better not see this on eBay someday. And I said to him, my man, you will never see this on eBay.
Yeah.
Ever. So, but can you see it as an Is throw up, or does it look like it says ZI?
Well, it's backwards, but I know
it's backwards. Yeah, okay. But
yeah, SI. It looks like SI.
It's as legit as it gets, man. And is as a lot of other writers have influenced me, holds a very special place in my heart, because, back when I was writing, in the 80s, Queens got a lot of shit. And so one of the things I was very proud of was this guy. So
yeah, he made the mission out there. I've actually been bombing with him out there to the F's, him with Satch and Min and all these guys.
Yeah, sometimes I truly believe that there may not have been a subway car that he didn't touch at one point.
For real. Seriously. I would agree. Yo, on that note, my friend, I bid you a good night.
All right, man. Enjoy, man. It's good.
Be
shit,
good.
man.
Take care of yourself out there, and we'll catch up on the other side of this.
No doubt, man. Until next time, man.
All right, take care.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.